Hi. Welcome to Forever Wild, a podcast about family, memory, and the stories that shape who we become. I'm Meagan McGovern, and I'm the oldest.
I'm Nora Gibbs, and I'm the funniest of the McGovern girls. And together we're sharing our journey growing up with a childhood full of chaos, adventure, and unforgettable moments.
Every episode, we will dive into some stories and share things that make us reflect about what family means.
Thank you for joining us. This is Forever Wild.
So for this episode, we kind of ended up last time where my mom and all the four of us, were moving all over the country. And we had moved everywhere, and she had burned our house down. And we're going to talk about a plan of my mother's to get us out of poverty, or at least out of, our immediate crisis for the moment, and how it worked. And she had a brilliant plan, and it was something that we didn't think was even possible, and it worked. And I think we're going to kind of set the scene for how important this was and where we were. So Nora, you kind of bring us up to speed with where we were at this point in the story.
Sure. So at this point, we had left New York and we got to Texas, and we were now back in California. We were in the Los Angeles area. And in the first couple of years we were there, I think in the first year we were there, we lived in 3 different houses in Los Angeles. One in
Woodland Hills. Yeah, first we started in Woodland Hills.
So we started in Woodland Hills, and then we moved to Eagle Rock, Glendale area.
Yeah.
And then we moved to the Valley, the San Bernardino Valley. And it was in the Valley that I think I must have been in second grade by this point, first or second grade. And it was a cool area. I loved the Valley. I loved being a Valley girl. It was right, it was the mid 80s, right? Or early 80s. So Valley girls were just a thing. And we lived in the Valley, like we lived in Sepulveda. And this was a house. Well, this grand plan was about to happen that, I went to his elementary school there. It was called Glenville Street School. And while I went to that school, just to kind of give you guys an example of what kind of people we were hanging around at this school. Robin Lively, Blake Lively's sister, went to the school where I went to. She was in, I think, 5th grade. I was in 2nd grade. And she got a role in Knight Rider. She was the girl in the coma in Knight Rider while I was in school. And it was such a big deal. We had such a famous girl in our school, and she used to do like the Thriller dance with her best friend on the playground. And it was just kind of a fun time to be in the Valley, right? Like everybody you knew was a model or going to acting classes. And
but I don't think people who didn't grow up in LA understand how common this was. I mean, when I was in 6th grade, I went to school with Tiffany Ann Francis, who was one of the kids on Little House on the Prairie, which is really funny because now on my Facebook page, I'm friends with Nellie Olson from Little House on the Prairie.
Right.
And I could have, easily been friends with her at the same time. And I'm also friends with the girl who played Laura Ingalls. And just Facebook friends, obviously. Yeah, I am. Melissa Gilbert. Melissa Gilbert.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
Well, it's because of the whole prairie dress thing. I wrote an article. I wrote a whole post about how we did a Prairies and Pioneers tour, and we went to visit little Laura Ingalls' house. And I wrote a whole story about how Nellie Olson had been the villain in all of my, childhood fantasies about Little House on the Prairie. And then I ended up being friends with her on Facebook, which became really funny. Yeah. But so I was friends with Tiffany Ann Francis, and her sister Melissa ended up being on Little House on the Prairie as well. And then you were talking the other day about Jason Bateman living on our street, which I didn't know. And
that's the house we moved into after this house. That's on our street. Yeah.
And then in the background, my dad was still an actor, and he had been roommates with Warren Beatty and starred in a bunch of Jack Nicholson, or not starred in. He had parts in a bunch of movies that Jack Nicholson had starred in. And now, at the time this story starts, it was clear that this was unsustainable, that I was in 9th grade. I was in high school at this point, because I'm 7 years ahead of Nora in school, because she might be the funniest, but I'm the smartest. So even though she was in 2nd grade, I was in 9th. And high school, I couldn't we couldn't move every 2 months. We couldn't keep doing that. And my mother did, to her credit, had some sense that this had to stop.
Right.
And I mean, when we say there was no money, there was no money. I mean, Nora, you tell. I mean, what? Talk about food for a minute. I mean, what were we doing for food?
Well, I remember vividly like going to Catholic church and getting boxes of food from the Catholic church. They have food. And I remember going to get, and I will say nothing makes a good grilled cheese sandwich like government cheese. Like it's
Velveeta, the cheap
it's
Velveeta.
like Velveeta. It's like a giant block of cheese. Slice it and, whatever. Um, but I can remember going to a Catholic church and getting boxes of food. And I can remember, relying on the kindness of strangers. There were a lot of food bank type of things. I think at some point there were food stamps involved. I don't know if there were, but I remember some have a voucher, and I don't know where the vouchers came from, but I remember going to sort vouchers. And it was a lot of soups. It was a lot of stews. It was a lot of split pea soup that would sit on the stove
Right.
for days. First pot, put the pot in the fridge and then just put the pot back out and reheat the whole pot. Like it would never go into a storage container, right? It was just a giant pot.
But the thing was is that my mother never accepted the reality that we were poor. We were, I mean, I think the quote from The Great Gatsby is, we were temporarily inconvenienced millionaires. That this was very temporary. The money was going to be coming in soon. And we just didn't have money this week because next week we'd have money. And then we would. And I don't know whether she got checks from her dad or checks from her sister or or insurance checks. There were always insurance checks coming. And I don't know where they were from. I don't know what she did to get them, but there were always insurance checks coming. And we would have, $500 and we would go spend it and we would have steak and we would have real food and we would have soda and we would have potato salad and things and then we would go buy clothes and maybe she bought clothes on credit cards. Maybe the clothes were stolen. I don't know, but we always looked not rich, but we fit in and we had the clothes to fit in and
And
we
we,
had the houses.
and we had houses, and our houses had pools in the yard, and they were in nice areas. And, um, it was, if you didn't know better, it looked like a fantastic shop if you weren't in the middle of it.
Right. And so, I mean, there were eating out was a big deal because it meant we had money. And, we always had a car. There was never a time that I can remember not having a car. And so we lived, all four of us, in a house with a pool and 3 or 4 bedrooms and nice furniture and a car. But sometimes we didn't have gas money for the car. And we probably never had insurance on the car. And it was kind of all sketchy. Everything was sketchy. But the longer we went this way, the more things fell apart. There's only so many times you can borrow a moving truck and move all your old furniture and take it from place to place and get stuff from garage sales and then move again and you lose half the stuff and then you move again and you lose half the stuff. And there's only so many times you can do this. Things were kind of coming to a head where her family knew that this was unsustainable. And my mom knew this was unsustainable. And she kind of, in one last desperate measure, decided that she was going to go on a game show and that she was going to win the championship on a game show, win a bunch of money. And there was a game show that wasn't actually money. It was, I think it was a Cadillac worth $50,000.
Right.
And she was going to try to go on the game show, win the Cadillac, sell it, and get us some living money. And so that was her plan. And I mean, Nora, do you remember when this all started or what you thought of it when it began?
I do remember. I remember her being very excited about it. And I remember, it was a trivia show. So mom was very good at trivia. She knew a little bit about everything. And it was just enough, as my husband likes to say, it was just enough to be right. It was a little bit
Right.
about everything. So we were very intentional as a family in helping her prep for the show. As far as I remember reading Trivial Pursuit cards, like we would just have the box of cards in the car. And anywhere we went, we would just, hey mom, what's the capital of, Spain? Hey, what's the capital of wherever? And we would just read her cards all the time, trivia cards. And it's, I think, honestly, where I got my love for trivia from.
And this show it's called Sale of the Century. And it was a show that, I mean, back then, if you stayed home from school, the only thing on were game shows. And everybody would know this show, the same way you know what Jeopardy is. this is something that everybody watched, everybody knew. And if you weren't, obviously, if you didn't stay at home, you wouldn't be able to see who was playing. And if you weren't a kid, you wouldn't ever be able to watch it. But there were enough people watching TV during the day. And I guess VCRs were starting to be a thing. Some people would tape it, and people cared about game shows back then. People knew what this was. It was kind of a big deal.
Well, and the thing with this show, there was a host named Jim Perry that they had spokesmodel. And at the time that this show came out, I don't even know if you know this, but one of the spokesmodels was in a ZZ Top video for the video Legs.
Oh, you're fake. No, I didn't know that. That's funny.
So one of them, they're really, I don't know, she was very sweet. She had short hair, like a cool little, flippy, like a short Farrah Fawcett haircut. She was great.
Yeah.
She was in the video for Legs. So it was really kind of cool that we got to meet her at, but that's actually what she gets on the show. So as she was prepping for the show, I think there was a lot of anticipation. I didn't know the extent of what it could potentially mean for our family. I just knew it was an exciting time in our family because something big was happening. And it was a family effort to help mom prep for the show.
And I think at this point, mom was feeling very under the gun. This was 2 or 3 years after my father had left. She's got 4 little kids. I'm 13 years old. I think I'm 14 now. So Nora's 8. Nora's 8. And things are falling apart, and there's no other option here because it's hard to explain why my mother was unemployable. I don't know whether it's temperament or circumstance, but my mother was unemployable. And my mother was also heavy, which I know that's not, it kind of defined who she was. Whether this is true or not, she saw herself as too heavy to get a job and too unattractive to ever work anywhere. And it doesn't matter whether that was in her head or not, but it was a reality for her that she felt like there was no one who would employ her to do anything. And I think that was reinforced by the people around her.
Well, and you have to remember also, like this, in a 10-year period, mom had gone from this beautiful, blonde Marilyn Monroe lookalike, like this 5'10", gorgeous, big boobs, blonde hair, this really attractive woman. I mean, she was thought people on the streets when they walked by, to a very plain Jane, mother of 4, single mom, heavy set, brown hair, ponytail,
wearing house clothes,
clothes,
no money.
She didn't care.
She didn't care. She did not care about her appearance at all.
Yeah.
But I think that if you said, what would you do for a job? She certainly wasn't going to go get a job as a reporter for a fashion magazine.
Right. Right.
And people said, well, go be a secretary. And she would just laugh like, in what world? In what world would I leave, 4 kids home alone by themselves, unsupervised? And I don't know that we were special needs children, but we were not easy. I don't think there were many days where all 4 of us were at school and all of us behaved, and we would all come home on the bus and go to school on the bus and get ourselves off to school. And I mean, even mom was getting to the point that, okay, enough is enough.
Right. We needed some stability. And, I mean, and for me, and, I don't want to get worse, but a lot of it was also, the friendships were really hard for me as far as always being the new kid. And I'm really good at like making friends immediately, but holding on to them is often hard. Right. Like,
well, yeah, because they find out you're not funny. They find out you're not as funny as they say you are.
I know. It's like when people find me online and they're like, oh my God, you're so funny. And then they meet me and I'm like, I'm really not. Like, but sorry. So, the friendship thing would always be, for me in my mind, well, if it doesn't work out, we're just going to move. So I don't have to invest in it.
Right. Right. Well, also, I think there's the sense of, I'm not going to invest in the friendships because it's going to be painful when we do leave.
Right. And you don't want to get invited to like birthday parties that are going to be in, or trips, or what are you doing for the summer? I'm like, bro, I don't know what I'm doing next week.
No kidding. I mean, nobody has any idea. And mom, and yeah. And what, your mom might steal your wallet if we do show up at the birthday party. All right. So let's get to the actual game show. So we had helped her prep. We had helped her get into all of the trivia. We knew every state capital. We knew every country's capital. We knew a bunch of sports stuff we didn't want to know. And we went to Sale of the Century, and the setup was that basically they ask you questions and you get points, and they called the points dollars. So for every question, say you get $5 to spend. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most money wins. But during the show, you can use some of your points to buy small prizes. So that's the deal, is if you don't think you're going to win the game, you might as well use the money you've got to get prizes, because that's the only thing you're going to go home with. But if you might win the game, then you might lose it if you spend your money on prizes instead. So they tempt you with things like, I don't know, a fur coat or a vacation to Mexico for $5. And if you're up by $30, then sure, I'll spend $5, but then you might still lose because this is only halfway through the game. And we told Mom our strategy was, do not buy anything. We don't need fur coats. We don't need things to go anywhere. We don't want anything. Just win the game. And
We want the
she
money.
kind of, yeah, we want the money.
Or
We want the car. We need you to win. And so she went, and I will be honest that I thought my mother was brilliant, but I also thought this was wacky. I thought that you couldn't win a game show. And I also believed that my mother could come through for us with a lot of stuff, but I didn't believe that this was the kind of thing she could come through with, because she hadn't come through before. And I did not believe that this could happen. And I don't know, Nora, did you think, you were little, you probably thought, of course this is going to win.
well, I mean, I've always been, pretty optimistic about this kind of stuff, but I really thought, I don't think I knew what it meant for us, so I didn't really care if she won. I just thought it was really fun to be involved with. Like, I didn't know what
Right,
it meant at that point. Like, of
right,
course, I'm super competitive, so of course I wanted her to win and beat these other people. But
right,
I didn't know how much money was involved. I didn't know that our livelihood would change if she won. Like for me, it was just like, let's have some fun, and I really want her to win because winning's the best.
right. Well,
So
I think they filmed 5 episodes in one day. And so since my mom, I think her first game show, the first episode she was on a Wednesday, because, she had to wait for somebody else to lose so she could get on the next time. Or I don't know exactly how they figured out which it was, but they told her to show up for taping and they weren't sure which one she would be on.
And now remember, she had to bring 5 shirts, and we had to find 5 shirts for her.
Right. And that was, again, the whole thing where she didn't have any clothes and she couldn't just go to a regular store to buy clothes, and everything was old and ratty. So it was a big deal that she had to go find dresses. And so we went and we waited and we watched Monday's taping and Tuesday's taping with other people. And we weren't that interested, but it was kind of fun to watch. And we just kept telling her about strategy like we knew. But she went on Wednesday's show and she won. And she won like whatever it was, $120 or something by the end of the show. And it was super exciting. And I think you had to win a certain amount of money to get the Cadillac and the grand prize. I think you needed $500 or something like that to get the thing. And nobody really won more than $100 per episode because every question is worth $5. But at the end of the episode, she had like $105 and she was the champion, which meant she was going to go back on Thursday's episode and Friday.
Where you could buy things. You could buy
You could
whatever
buy
you want.
things.
You could buy, they had some prizes that if you had like $300, you could buy something big. It wasn't a car, but it was probably worth 5 or 6. I think it's important to say that at some point they gave her, I want to say it was $100 cash, because I remember going to dinner
I think they gave you the actual money that you won to take home, because that night, after she won on Thursday and Wednesday and Thursday, and spoiler alert, she won on Friday too, which meant we were done. And then we had to wait like 2 weeks for the next taping. So, but that night when we went home, we had like $200
Yeah.
in cash. They just gave her the cash that she had from that day, which to them was nothing. But to us, we had filled up the car on the way there from our change jar. And we were out of quarters at that point. It was all nickels and dimes and pennies because the quarters had gone a long time ago. So we had filled the car up to get to the game show with like, $4.73 from our change jug. And we went home with $200 and we stopped for, I think it was Luby's, or I don't even know if they had Luby's in California. I don't remember where we went, but I know we had ice cream and Morton got a shake and it was a big deal.
I remember her calling her sisters and telling them that she had won days. And she called them from a payphone in the restaurant. I do remember.
Yes. And she was almost crying. She was so excited. And she knew that if she could play 2 more days, she she could win, and she could get the $500 and she could get the Cadillac. And so I think, yes, she cut her hair and decided she wanted to look better for the next 2 episodes. And I think she was just going, because it was over a weekend. So she told them, I think she was just going to say, I got my hair styled over the weekend or something, or whatever it was. But when we went, but somehow over the next couple of days while we were waiting for the next taping, I think it was maybe a week, maybe 10 days, they said that they decided, the game show called my mom and they said that the single mother of 4 girls was such a cool thing. And they were so excited about it. And they couldn't see giving her a Cadillac, that was kind of a weird thing to give a single mother of 4 girls. And they were going to change the format of the game show right in the middle so that instead of a Cadillac, you got $50,000 cash. And she would have the choice to decide whether she wanted to go for the money or the car. And they wanted to refilm the ending, the last show she did before she kept playing. And they said, whatever you do, don't get a haircut and don't change your appearance, because we're going to refilm the ending of the last one. And she had already gotten a haircut for that. So she had to go back and refilm it with like a wig or something that looked
They put her
really
in a wig from the last couple of minutes of the show.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And so we went back, and after 2 weeks or whatever, that $200 was gone. But at this point, we believed this could work. And so I'm the oldest, and I've got all 4 of us are in the audience, and I'm 13 and you're 14, and you're 6 or 7.
I
guess you're, yeah. And so at this point, I'm watching all of you like a hawk, and I'm making sure that we all have snacks and that we all behave, and I'm telling you all to shush. And we know this is going to work. This is super, super exciting for us. And then she won game number 4, and she was like $5 short for the cash prize. But here's the thing. She could have walked away with everything she had now. Maybe the money was like $5,000 or whatever the cash prize would have been at this point. But I think at this point, if she kept playing and she played the next day, if she won the $50,000. If she lost all the prizes and everything else she already had.
I remember them asking her, are you going to do it? She kept saying, I want the money. I want the money.
Right. I think they were offering her buyouts to not play.
Well, I will tell you, she did take a couple buyouts. She took a buyout. She bought a fur coat. And then I know that
it was a coyote fur coat. It was so weird.
And then I know that she bought a scooter. She bought a moped. And I remember that because Katie got hit by a neighbor when we were
Yeah. Katie was like 12 riding the moped all over the place. And it was a very cool moped. And yeah, and
somebody buying them 2 things. Those were the 2 things I remember her actually buying.
And so she was $5 short for the last one. And then so it all came down to this last episode and whether she was going to win or lose. And I mean, the questions were all things like, what's the capital of, I don't know, not Mongolia, but what's the capital of Yugoslavia,
right,
or whatever it was at that point? And what's the capital of Alabama? And she knew all of those. Those were easy. But some of them would be, about mystery writers, which she knew. And a lot of them were about celebrities, which she didn't know. And there were a couple of times when we thought somebody else was going to win and they were ahead. And I think there was an episode where somebody else was ahead, but he was so far ahead that he bought a trip and he spent $10 and Mom won by $5. And we were like,
I do remember there was somebody, and I think it was that same guy who kept buzzing in and he didn't know the answers, but he was trying to block him off the way. And I was so mad. Oh my God.
She was too.
She was so
She was furious.
Yeah.
And so at the end, okay, go ahead, tell it. What happened?
She won the money. But the question, coincidentally, was about somebody who was from Staten Island, New York. And it was a friend of her mother's.
Joe Garagiola.
I don't even know.
I don't even know who he was. He was some kind of sports player, a baseball player. And he was he was either from Staten Island. I must have been from Staten Island. And my mom knew it because she was from Staten Island. And her mother had just died like 6 months ago. And she kept looking for signs for her mother, right, that her mother was talking to her. And so the last question on the last episode was, Joe Garagiola. And she took that the rest of her life. She said, my mother was with me that day and my mother knew that I needed to win that money. And my mother gave me the money for my girls. And she won $58,000 cash, which, all right, get your calculator out. What was $58,000
Well, I will
in?
tell you, she also won a year supply of success rice, which we ate. It was a boiled bag rice, which we
Is that like
oh,
pre-boiled rice?
yeah, it's like parboiled, and you put it in a bag in your pot of water, and it simmers in the bag. So then you can just pull the bag out. You don't remember this? We ate that like every meal for a year.
I don't remember it. I mean, I remember what it looks like, that it was a weird plastic bag that you put it in there, but I wouldn't have eaten that. You
Oh my
guys
god!
probably.
Well, I love rice. I used to eat rice and butter all the time. That was my meal. But it was like a yellow box with white writing, like a red background. Okay, $58,000 in 1984 is the equivalent of $177,000. And I
Okay,
will
that's a lot
also
of money.
say, at this point in time, this was the most money that had ever been given away on a game show.
It was. And one of the things that I was annoyed by then was because and I don't remember how it all worked, was I think it took her 8 days to win the money. Or maybe, but only 5 days into it, they switched the money around or whatever it was. So she won $58,000 because every day that somebody didn't win, you added another $1,000 to the pot. So since the time they started to the end, it was eight days, or she got 58,000. But subsequently, like, you know, the other people who set it up with this same kind of whatever format they had, people were winning like $102,000 because it had been 52 days since anybody won the jackpot.
Right.
And I was like, damn, I wish they had, that would have been a big deal if she could have doubled her money. But
Yeah.
you know what? $177,000, that would be life changing for anybody.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It was huge.
And it was fun. I mean, it was a fun experience for our family. I felt very, it was a cohesive moment for our family. We're all into this. We were all very close, wanting mom to win. And, I remember when she won, like, I'm going to get teary eyed, but I remember, like, I was so proud of her. And I remember, like, walking down the stairs. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fall. But we all got to run out on stage with her. And I know there's
Right.
a video somewhere out there. So if anybody has an idea of how to get this old video, I've looked all over YouTube. I've looked everywhere. I can't get it. But there is a video of all of us running out to be with my mom. And I remember
There's a ton. Yeah. There's a ton of videos of Sale of the Century,
it's not
but I haven't been able to find her as a player anywhere. It just doesn't, it's just not online. But this was kind of a turning point for us, that because my mother was so damaged and so, I don't know, because of her background and everything else, this was never going to be a happy ending for her. And she was never going to be able to completely turn it around. But this was where everything kind of, you know, changed for us for at least a couple of years. We had money, and she bought a house, and we bought a house. And that was a huge deal. Now, there was still no plan in place to pay the mortgage payments. And there was still not a great plan for how to keep us in this house. But this was it. We had peace. I mean, for at least this was right at the start of 10th grade for me. And things didn't fall apart again until I was a senior in high school, 2.5 years. We were in a house for 2.5 years. That was a big deal at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it was a great house, and it was a very calm time, I feel like. I remember, Aunt Maggie coming over to wallpaper the living room and wallpaper the front entry of that house. Like, I had a lot of really good memories of that house. My best friend lived next door, Trisha.
Right.
Peace. Um,
And I made friends in high school. It was the first time I had friends. I made friends that I still have today, and good friends, wonderful people. And they came over to visit, and we had food. We could feed them when they came over.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. And of course, the house had a pool and a hot tub and another hot tub.
And a tree
And it
house.
was smooth. And a what?
A tree house.
Oh, and a tree house and pet cages in the backyard. I mean, it was a very weird, funky LA house, but it was cool.
Love that house. Love that house.
I think we're going to wrap up the episode here, because that was kind of the highlight. That was the calm in the storm. That was when my mother, we believed in her and she believed in us, and we thought that we could make this work. And,
I really feel like that whole time in our life, like between when she went on game show and we lived on Rammer Street, was like the epitome of the McGovern girls in a good place, like having a good time. We didn't need our
Right.
dad, we didn't need mom. It was the four of us and our mom, and we swam and we ate good food and we went to the beach on the weekends, the other seven, and
I mean,
had a great life in that house. And it was really a good time. And I think we all felt some peace.
right. When we finally, had to pack it up and leave, we were 10, 12, 14, and 16. And I was 16 in LA in the 80s. And I went to North Hollywood High School and it was fun. I had a car. We could drive places. We could go. I mean, great friends and good people. And I had a real normal teenage life for a year and a half, something like that. It was kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And, I mean, yes, it all fell apart and got worse, but we believed in mom. And this meant everything to her. It meant that her sisters saw her differently. Her brother saw her differently. Her parents, I mean, her mother was gone at that point, but she kept saying, I won this for my mom.
Right.
And people believed in her. And I think her family did kind of believe in her again for a little while.
She was kind of famous in LA. I remember we were at the zoo, at the LA Zoo, and a woman came up to her. I'm going to cry again. And we were on, I don't know where we were on a bridge looking at the animal below. And a woman came up, are you Maureen? She said, yes. She said, I was for you the whole time on Salem Century.
Isn't that funny? I think, and that did, it happened a lot for like the next year or two. People kept saying, you poor thing with your four beautiful girls. We just wanted you to win. And I'm so glad they switched to the money. And that guy was just awful to you. I just hated him so much.
Gotta find that video somewhere out there. There's that.
All right.
We wrap up today. I think, as we kind of foreshadowed a little bit, it was a great time in our life, but unfortunately it didn't last. And we'll get into what happened and kind of, set us on the next path, the next path in our journey, next journey where we are leaving LA or leaving this house.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Forever Wild.
As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, let us know. Leave us a review, find Meagan on Facebook, or share it with someone who loves a good story.
We would really like to hear from you. We want you to hear your stories, your questions, your thoughts. And, we want to know what resonates with you so we can talk more about what you want to hear about.
And if you remember our mom on Salem Century, we'd love to hear about it. I think that would be so fun for anybody who was homesick in the 80s and watching this little lady, big lady, win the jackpot.
But that would be really cool if somebody could track down those episodes. So,
Well, until next time, stay wild.
Bye.
Bye.